Today, I want to ask you a question. If you live in an English speaking Caribbean country, do you consider yourself freer and more fortunate than many others around the world? It's a question worth pondering. In a world where freedoms are increasingly under threat, where journalists are jailed, political dissent is silenced, and religious leaders are persecuted, the nations of the English-speaking Caribbean stand apart. From Jamaica to Barbados, from Trinidad and Tobago to Antigua and Barbuda, these countries shine as beacons of democracy and freedom. But how often do we stop to reflect on those freedoms? These rights, freedom of speech, the right to vote, freedom to practice our faiths, are the very foundation of our personal dignity and prosperity. Yet they're not guaranteed everywhere. Consider this. As of 2023, more than 320 journalists around the world are imprisoned simply for doing their jobs. Thousands of political prisoners sit behind bars for daring to criticize oppressive regimes. And in many countries, religious leaders are punished for practicing their faiths. These are grim realities. Now think about our region. In the English-speaking Caribbean, these injustices do not exist. Journalists work without fear. Citizens worship freely. And political prisoners, they're not a feature of our democracies. In fact, nations like Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago are ranked among the freest in the world. Antigua and Barbuda, too, has been rated free in the 2024 Freedom of the World report, with high scores for political rights and civil liberties. These are things we should celebrate, but we shouldn't take them for granted. Freedoms are fragile. They require care and vigilance. This is a responsibility that we all share, governments, opposition parties, and citizens alike. Governments must lead with integrity, earning the trust of their people through transparency and truth. Opposition parties have an equally important role to criticize constructively, propose real alternatives, and help strengthen our institutions. And as citizens, we must hold both governing and political parties to account. But let's be clear, freedom should not be abused to spread false information or to create division. That applies to all of us, particularly those of us who use social media. Now, I understand that many Caribbean citizens feel frustrated with government services, particularly for the supply of water, the fixing of roads, and they have every right to demand better. But let's also acknowledge the broader challenges that face governments. Small economies like ours have financial and trade constraints that larger nations do not. Even so, in the totality of our experiences, we are far better off than many who live in conflict zones or under authoritarian regimes. In truth, we are also better off than some vulnerable communities in rich countries who also suffer discrimination. We only have to think of the daily bombings in Gaza, Lebanon, and Ukraine, the killings in the Congo, and the lawlessness in Haiti, where gangs rob, rape, and murder at will and terrorize their own Haitian people. This isn't about excusing inefficiency or lack of accountability. It's about creating a more informed and balanced dialogue. Together we can push for better while appreciating what we already have. Here's the truth. The freedoms we enjoy in the English-speaking Caribbean are rare and precious. They are the result of generations of struggle and sacrifice, from the abolition of slavery and the termination of indentured labor to the fight for independence. But these freedoms require vigilance, courage, and commitment. Free and fair elections must remain the cornerstone of our democracies. Institutions that protect our rights must be fortified That includes our courts, our institution of the Ombudsman, and other protective institutions. Globally, we must stand for justice. That is why we should care about the Russian war against Ukraine and the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestinian groups. These crises have shattered lives and undermined freedoms. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I'll ask again, if you live in the English-speaking Caribbean, do you consider yourself freer and more fortunate than others around the world? I hope you do. But with that freedom comes responsibility. We must defend and advance our freedoms together. We must ensure that our freedoms endure for generations to come. We must continue to be a shining example to the world of what democracy and freedom can achieve. Thanks for listening.